Welcome to On Cage. Today we're speaking with Alex Ruiz. Alex has worked with really a long list of startup companies and helping them become much more efficient and international. We'll be talking about how that has occurred and what he's done. Most recently, Alex is the Chief Executive Officer of 3GO, and we'll talk about the work that they do in the cybersecurity space. But before we get there, Alex, tell us a little bit about you and your career.
Absolutely. So once again, I'm excited to be here today. A little bit about myself. I am a Colombian immigrant, first generation. Got my start in New York City, the Big Apple. I actually, after school, I started off in Fintech as a product manager. And it was something so new to me from what I had grown up seeing. The ability to come in and build something in the financial space was amazing. I love doing that. Actually, got my early start working with small businesses there. I built like what was a precursor to a PEO product, and it was amazing. I loved the ability to go work across the organization to get things done. Ultimately, I decided that fintech wasn't the thing for me because there was so much regulation in the industry. You could only build within some constraints. And so I went to a startup. This is pre the dot-com bust. That company was a DSL ISP. We burned through about $120 million in 12 months. The company ended up going under. And so I learned early in my career, I love building, but you need a little bit of strategy into what you're building. So decided to go get my MBA and went to Stanford. And ever since Stanford, for the last 15 to 20 years, I've been in tech. I've been in a variety of startups, as you mentioned. I've been at Google, eBay, and I found a niche for myself in really working both with the technical teams and the sales teams to build efficient operations, help translate their needs into process, into strategy. And so things like what are the right metrics that you need for decision making? How do you implement processes that scale? How do you
Mhm.
sequence a roadmap? So it's been a really interesting last 15 years in the Valley. I'm sure we can talk a lot more about the changes that I've seen.
I love that focus, Alex. It's something that it goes through waves, but it's certainly, I'd say, in vogue right now to be focused and to really have a great solution when it comes to setting up efficient operations for businesses. We've all lived through this COVID wave where startups, could be doing anything and then could do nothing. And then now we want all of the startups to be wildly profitable. So everyone's expecting very, very efficient solutions. And for me, I think it's really like the difference between a successful startup often and one that just becomes like a story from the past. Right? I mean, so tell me more about when you think about that operations and how you're setting it up, what are the things that you go through?
You couldn't be more correct, right? I think
Yeah.
when capital was easy to find, companies were getting funded with a dream, a promise of what they could do, and nobody
Mm,
was really holding their feet to the fire, saying, "Okay, now are you hiring efficiently? Are you spending that money wisely?" And so now you're starting to see that change. And what I've seen is a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with, and even mid-sized companies, they've come in and they've gotten used to maybe throwing bodies at the problem. And they'll bring in, a lot of folks to do, for example, trust and safety, which is an area that I sometimes focus on. And so do a lot of manual work around reviewing different things. They might throw in a lot of people to do customer success, and they're doing manual calls, they're all these pieces. And so a lot of times when I come in, I start looking at processes that they have and saying, how repeatable are these processes? Is
mhm,
this something that you're doing over and over again? And then how well can somebody learn that process? And so
mhm,
take a look at the two things, which is the ability for somebody to really put that process on paper and how repeatable it is. And then you can start creating a process that's scalable. And so a lot of it is just digging into what they're doing and helping them understand it at a deeper level. They could
yeah.
typically know that this is happening. It's more like, what are the nuts and bolts of how it's happening?
Yeah, no, I love that. And Alex, one of the things that you mentioned is really working on the international side. So tell me a little bit more about the work that you're doing there.
Oh, I am, as an immigrant, particularly passionate about, especially LATAM, but generally about international. And so when I was at Google, one of my very, very first roles was helping roll out their mobile products in their infancy in both LATAM and in Asia. And so I
Hmm.
had the first taste of traveling, working with clients, working with various sales folks in those regions and understanding the nuances, the differences. And so I went through all the phase of like, how are you hyper local? How are you relevant? And all those pieces. And so now I actually work with an NGO that's called La Familia. It represents the biggest set of both Latin entrepreneurs and investors in Silicon Valley in the US. And what I do work with them is how do you create a community that helps them get access to capital, gets them help access to partners, to all the things that they need to be successful. And so that's one way that I'm working on. But I've also worked with a few companies as they go international. Like, how do you think about that international move? How do you build processes? How do you hire a team remotely? It's something that I love doing.
When you think about the market right now, Alex, I mean, we are in this strange moment. What's top of mind for leaders like you when you're thinking about like, how do I scale the business? In many cases, how do I keep it going, right? I mean, what's the top of mind on the operations side right now?
I think that everybody hears the buzzword now of AI as an example,
Mm,
and you start hearing about the promise of AI. And the initial set of products that have come out on AI are a lot of wrappers on like ChatGPT and things that aren't quite doing a lot for the organization. But there's a promise there. And I love all the potential for AI and some of these new tools to come out to create efficiency. And so
yeah.
one of the things that's very relevant to people is that when I look at the tool set for enterprises and small businesses, there's just hundreds and hundreds of tools, right? Like, for example, just take the example of something to keep notes and keep
Yeah.
your action items in those pieces. You have Asana, Airtable, Monday, Jira, ClickUp, all these tools. And you can spend, as an organization, so much time trying to implement all these things that are going to create efficiency. But unless you really understand your culture and your needs, it's going to be hard to do that. So I think two things to answer your question succinctly. One is I think that there's a lot of promise and a lot of interesting things that are going to be happening with AI to make the
Hmm.
organization more efficient. But two, you have to be careful as the CEO or one of the leaders in not throwing too many different tools at your employees because it just becomes confusing and a waste of time.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd be remiss not to ask you about cybersecurity. I mean, here you are, you're the chief executive officer of 3GO. 3GO is a company that's creating personalized security plans and helps people implement them. Tell me more about the security landscape right now.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I should have actually brought that up much earlier. In terms of one of the things that a lot of businesses are dealing with is cybersecurity, right?
Yeah.
It's that the tools that fraudsters and other users are getting so much more efficient and better at what they do, that an organization is more at risk than they've ever been, right?
Yeah.
I hear examples of now people have the ability to clone voices. And so you'll get a voicemail from your CEO saying, I need you to send this wire to XYZ location. Or you'll get a very personalized email saying your mom or your CEO is in this location, their kid whose name is this and birthday is this needs XYZ thing. And so
Hmm.
from a cybersecurity standpoint, organizations need to be educated on the things that they need to protect. Right? A lot of times they don't understand that, whether it's their data, their finances, all these other components, what are the things they need to protect? And then secondly, how do they protect those things? What
Yeah.
3GO does, or what 3Go does, is we actually help companies, small businesses, do an assessment to understand where they're at and how at
Hmm.
risk they are. And then we give them a lot of education and guidance and help them actually mitigate the types of issues that are coming on board. And so by using the 3Go product, most of the companies that go through us are about 95% protected for most of the common scams. But
Right.
if you're targeted specifically by somebody, it's a lot more difficult to protect yourself, especially as a small business. But often it's one of those crimes of opportunity. They're
Right.
just blasting a lot of different emails, a lot of different things, hoping to get a bite. And
Yeah.
so we help our customers actually not be the ones that raise their hand and say, yes, I'm a target.
That's great. And apologies, 3Go. It's an interesting landscape. I was actually at a cybersecurity conference yesterday, And so I feel like I have been inundated with the challenges that we face in the space. Although, albeit one of the speakers yesterday pointed out that a lot of the tools that are dangerous are also leading us down to paths where we have new tools to protect ourselves. So it's an interesting moment. Everyone thinks about AI as being something that's going to cause a lot of risks, but in many cases, it also can cause a lot of protection as well. So it's an exciting time. But Alex, I mean, you have certainly played a role in helping companies emerge, transform, and scale. What really drives your interest in this space?
There's probably two things that I really love doing. One of them is I'm the type of person that'll drink the Kool-Aid. So I will talk to a company, and if I love their product, I love the vision, then that's enough to really get me involved and
Hmm.
help me come in and really have that passion. The second
Hmm.
thing is I love solving hard problems,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to putting together things that an organization needs, like good strategy, good processes, metrics, good sales, all these components. And so I love if I can see the vision, if I can like be part of that, then how do I come in and really help the organization think through the things that are going to help them grow as efficiently as possible. Right. And so though that combination of solving interesting problems as well as
Hmm.
being passionate are really what drives me.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, it's an interesting time that we're living in. I think that certainly with the emergence of generative AI over the last year, we're going to have a whole new set of, as you mentioned, there's 100 different solutions for every specific niche area. There's going to be a whole new set of enterprises that are coming to market, some that will scale, some that won't, and some that will put together an international strategy, some that will miss it. And certainly that guidance that you can provide is key. But with those areas in mind, as you're looking into 2024, what's on the docket? What do you think that folks are thinking about?
Oh, absolutely. I think there are a couple of really interesting opportunities and as well as difficulties. One opportunity is, especially in the tech space, there's been a lot of layoffs in 2023. So I'm seeing a lot of really good candidates out there for organizations. And so sometimes when I advise an organization, I'm able to leverage my network to come bring in some really great people to things. So one is I think that there's a lot of great people out there. Two, I think that as you talked about generative AI and some of these other tools, now they're going to start getting more real for enterprises and have a much bigger impact for them. And
Yeah.
I'm super excited about that piece. And then
Yeah.
lastly, just because it's near and dear to my heart, I personally would predict that in 2024, more Latin startups are going to get funded than ever before. And
Oh,
the
great.
reason for that is because the tools to get started and develop MVPs are becoming cheaper and more accessible. And
Hmm.
so you don't have to have $500,000 now to get your idea off the ground. You could bootstrap that. And if you have a really great idea and it starts picking up speed, then you have organizations like the one I'm working with that help you find capital. So I'm really excited about 2024 from that perspective.
Yeah, no, I'm based in Miami, and certainly I've seen several groups that are funding more startups for Latin America pop up here in Miami, which is spectacular. And we're seeing a lot more kind of interest in innovation from the region, which is spectacular to see. But I mean, I really love what you said about AI. I was looking at some of the reports over the last couple of months, and some of the findings that have come back from the tests have just been ridiculously efficient, like maybe almost unbelievable results, right? And so I think that the challenge is going to be what you're highlighting, which is how do you take that test result and turn it into a real process, a real operation, something that can kind of scale across an organization. And that I think is going to be the challenge. I don't think there's been enough focus on that, to be honest, Alex. I remember reading about all the upskilling work that was being done by Amazon couple of years ago, and there's just a handful of companies that have even considered what upskilling is, full stop, right? And the reality is that everyone's going to have to figure that stuff out, but an exciting time for sure.
One thing to throw in, I found the study really interesting, is that one of the big consulting firms did a study where they gave all their consultants some Gen AI tools to go off and do research get ready for projects, etc. And what they found is that their top tier, the top 25% of consultants, these tools really only help them increase efficiency by maybe 5-10%. The next tier, lower down, which is, like maybe the middle tier of consultants, it helped them by about 25%. So it was
Mm,
significant. But the bottom tier, the folks that were struggling, they were having more of a difficult time, their improvement was dramatic. It was probably in the triple digits, right? And
mhm.
that's how much better the tools gave them. So I think that what's really interesting, as you're saying, is that now you're going to have more personalized tools for organizations that can help in all aspects of the business. We've seen
Mhm.
it in customer service. We've seen it in customer success. We're starting to see it even in some of the coding pieces. But the big interesting thing is, how do you take big organization problems, like, how do you have better communication? How do you make sure that everybody understands the success metrics and is following? All these other really interesting things can be increased and made better with some of these AI tools that are coming out.
Alex, you have such wisdom, such experience that people need. Where's the best place to reach you to learn more about how people can tap into your guidance?
Absolutely. So my LinkedIn profile is always open. It's Alex B. Ruiz, but you could also reach me at alexruiz@3go.com.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for being on the Uncaged show today. We've been speaking with Alex Ruiz. He is the Chief Executive Officer of 3Go. We've been talking more broadly, actually, about some of the challenges that companies face when they're trying to scale, and how do they have to think about operations and become more efficient, and also think about kind of the international piece, from a talent perspective, from an ideas perspective, and how to bring those markets to bear and really make the most of the global marketplace in general. Alex, thank you so much for being on Uncaged today, and we look forward to having you back.
And thanks so much for having me. It was great talking to you, and I look forward to coming back sometime.